Adolf Hitler was a German politician who was the leader of the Nazi Party. In 1933, he became the Chancellor of Germany, and the discrimination against the Jews began immediately after. Many laws were passed to exclude Jews from the civil rights of Germany. Violence and economic pressure were used to make the Jews leave Germany. People started boycotting Jewish businesses, and they were harassed and prone to violent attacks. Hitler's plan soon became clear: to exterminate the Jews, the final solution. Now, Adolf Hitler started constructing concentration camps, one of which was Auschwitz. Construction of Auschwitz began in October of 1941. The camp was intended to house 50,000 prisoners of war, but later they expanded to as much as 200,000 inmates. By 1942, Hitler decided the new purpose of the camp was to exterminate the Jews of Europe. In early 1943, the Nazis decided to greatly increase their gassing capacity by converting Crematorium II into a much larger gas chamber. They installed gas-tight doors, vents for Zyklon B, and ventilation equipment to remove the gas. Later, Crematorium 3, 4, and 5 were constructed using the exact same designs. By June 1943, all 4 gas chambers were ready for use. Zyklon B was the main method of mass murder by the Nazis. The cyanide-based gas that was originally used on insects and later experimented on prisoners of war was now being used as a deadly weapon. Auschwitz soon became the cemetery of over 1 million people. Life in these camps were extremely difficult. From the moment a prisoner would enter the camp, the Nazis would be selecting who can and cannot live, based on gender, age, and strength. Over 75% of the prisoners would be murdered immediately from the time of their arrival. Most oftenly, the ones who were to be murdered another day were the fit, healthy prisoners over the age of 14. These were the prisoners who would become workers. These prisoners were stolen of all possessions, and their hair was to be shaved off as if taking one's personality. Next, the prisoners would receive tattoos to replace their names. Now one would not be called by name, but by number. Prisoners would be assigned living quarters, or barracks, which would have 2 to 3 prisoners sharing a bunk. Some of the barracks wood, and others brick. The brick barracks were erected quickly and had no insulation, which made for very harsh winters. Wooden barracks had leaky roofs and were infested with rats. Never would a prisoner have a mattress, and in few cases, some would have hay to lay on. Each prisoner was given 1 blanket, and it was held dearly to them. After the introduction to the camps, those who are still alive have the opportunity to live on, but must work in harsh conditions and be fed little to no food. Prisoners would have a variety of jobs, and were woken up at nearly 4 a.m. Then, roll call was done, as well as a small morning meal and time in the latrines. A prisoner would have a minimum of 11 hours of work a day. Some would work on construction and landscaping, while the more infamous occupation was to be a Sonderkommando. These prisoners were to pick up bodies of fellow prisoners after the mass killings, whether that be gassing or holding a prisoner while the guards shot them. Usually, the Sonderkommando were responsible of burning the bodies in the crematorium, but sometimes they would also bury or stack the bodies in empty cattle cars. Diets would consist of 1,300 calories for the prisoners with less physically demanding jobs, as the ones who engaged in hard labor would usually eat around 1,700 calories. Prisoners were fed 3 meals a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at noon, and 1 in the evening. The food usually consisted of a small bowl of soup and a slice of bread. Food was one of the most valuable things in the camp. Many fights were made between prisoners over food, and many would steal from others. The mixture between hard labor and hunger created an epidemic of starvation sickness throughout the camp, losing weight and eventually dying, while others would become too weak to work and were taken to the gas chambers to be murdered. During the second half of 1944, the Red Army was approaching, and the Nazis decided to evacuate Auschwitz. 56,000 prisoners were marched out of Auschwitz, led by the Nazi guards. This led to many of the prisoners to die during this evacuation. The tragic event is now known as the Death March. 3 main reasons are thought to have started the Death March. 1. The Nazis did not want the prisoners to fall into enemy hands so that they could tell their stories of the camps. 2. The Nazis could have used the prisoners to help produce armaments. 3. Some Nazis, including Adolf Hitler, believed irrationally that they could use prisoners as hostages to guarantee the survival of the Nazi Party. After the long suffrage of the Jews, Auschwitz was torn down by the Nazi soldiers in all effort to destroy any evidence that could be used against them. Sonderkommando were commanded to get rid of any last bodies by burning them. The gas chambers were torn down, as well as most of the living quarters. Most of the documentation about the concentration camps were also destroyed, leaving the anguish of all to go unforgiven and drift into forget.